am I? So I'm Sarah, or Sarah Poppy Jackson, my full name, and I have been involved with transition for many years. In my 20s, I was a very angry activist. Um, yeah, I discovered the climate crisis and everything going on and started doing some research. And I was at the time working in marketing in London, so I had a very, very different work life, and had a lot of dissonance going on. So I was in my spare time doing a lot of activism, and I was blocking coal power stations with Greenpeace, protest marches, doing lots of petitions, on the weekends at farmers markets and in central London, people arguing with me about nuclear power and just lots of people quite, don't know if you've done that before, but people can be a bit funny. So I had a lot of that at the beginning, and I was quite angry, actually. I was quite an angry activist, and it was like me against the world, and I had to save it. So I obviously burnt out quite quickly. I think the moment was I'd switched from the corporate sector into the charity sector, thinking that would be a good move, to remove the dissonance. And I was heading for an acupuncture session. This is the irony, to look after myself because I was doing so much. And I was reading my phone, a message, as I was running down a flight of stairs in Holborn, and I fell down the staircase and twisted my ankle, and then had to hobble onto the bus to get my acupuncture, and then paid a lot of money to fix the ankle afterwards. But there you go. That's yeah. When you're busy and you're distracted, we do silly things and hurt ourselves. So that was a moment of pause for me. Um, there's lots of things to say in between that happened, and I could talk all day about that, but I won't. So what I'm doing now is there is no dissonance, and then I can sleep at night with myself. I'm walking the talk as best as I can. And I've really, since those days in my early 20s, so 20 years ago now, I've just shifted my whole life to respond to the climate crisis. And so I live off grid. I live in a tiny little wooden cabin in the woods. We have our own solar power and a borehole for water. We've planted thousands of trees, and we're nurturing the land for future generations and sharing the land, unlike many land owners, land stewards, and sharing and getting people to come to the land for ecotherapy sessions. I do one-to-ones and group nature connection sessions, and just getting people out and connecting in some way. And I feel like my role in life right now is facilitating interconnection. That's what I do. That's what I want to do. It's all about interconnection. And it's not just for others, it's actually for myself a lot of the time, right? Because I've been brought up in this system like all of us. And it's easy to flip back sometimes into, the busy, fast world of capitalism. So yeah, daily practice, daily connection for myself and for others and for the other than humans. And that's what I do. So that's me. Oh yeah. And bringing a sense of awe and wonder. Because if there isn't that, then what's the point, right? It's all just a bit too material realm and a bit too like we know everything. Well, we don't, do we really? So taking a step back into this space of awe and wonder and magic and mystery. So that's what I do now. Um, what else to say? Yeah, today, this session, for those of you that are actually here in the room today, I want you to think about being curious, so being open to the suggestions. Yeah, if you want to put your camera on, great, and also fine if not. And thinking about what I'm offering today is belonging and connection. So, a connection through this tiny little screen. I mean, you're very small, each of you. You can barely see your faces, but it's about connection. How can we connect to each other, to ourselves, and to the wider ecosystem that we find ourselves in? And that's the places that you've just shared with me, but also the wider. And I think about, right now, wherever we're sitting, we're all connected to the earth. There's earth beneath all of us, and underneath that earth are the earthworms. And with those earthworms are the soils being aerated, and under there's the mycelium networks connecting everything. And so we're all connected right now through the earth and through the air that we're breathing. We're all breathing the same air. So coming back to that space, we are connected, even though we've got this strange screen in between us. So yeah, hello. Hello, all of you. So a little moment to reflect. Dan's going to put a nice bit of babbling brook music on in the background. Music, I say, because it is the music of the water. Um, and I'd like you to take a little moment to think about a water body in your life. And that may be something that you live nearby, somewhere you go to, perhaps something in your childhood, or maybe it's something in your imagination. It could be a place you've always wanted to go to, but something you've got a connection with. Like, where in the world or in your imagination is there a water body that you're connected to? And we'll just give you a couple of minutes to think about that. I don't know if anyone's got any paper in front of them, but feel free to doodle and note anything down. And then in a moment, we'll put you into pairs in breakout rooms so you can share with each other a little of that, which I'd love to obviously hear all of your stories, but we'll do that for this time. So Dan, if you want to pop that babbling brook music on. Beautiful. Thank you. Yeah, a couple of minutes just to have a think. Okay. Hopefully you've had something's popped into your mind, maybe a vision of something, a sense of something, the smell, the sound.
Hello, Barry
Ah,
here.
hi there, up in
Hi.
Scotland.
Yes. Well, I started sharing personally because I'm looking out at the sea just now. So
Mm,
that seemed to be the obvious one. And then I was reminded of a holy well, a sacred well that I visited once down in Cornwall. You
mm,
went down deep into a kind of cave, down steps and stairs, and you got to the waters and you said a prayer and you blessed yourself with the water. And at that time, there was a big buzzy hornet, almost as a guardian, a gatekeeper. I says, right, thank you for letting me go down. And then I just reversed
mm,
back up. And Alice, I was speaking to Alice at the time, and she remembered the cenotes in Mexico and how
mm,
special that was
mm,
going down into. So yeah, so it's not just rivers and oceans, there's bodies of water everywhere that you can
mm,
access and,
mm,
just feel, just be in the space. Really
mm.
lovely,
Thank
really
you.
lovely.
Thanks for sharing. Yeah. And a really good point there, isn't it? It's not just the kind of obvious oceans and rivers, but the
Yeah,
cenotes in Mexico, right? Underground, these
yeah,
bodies of water and the wells, the sacred wells. Yeah,
yeah,
beautiful. Thank you for bringing that to all of us. I already thinking about this kind of mystery and wonder of water,
yeah.
that sharing. Thank you. Does anyone else want to put voice to what they heard or what they shared?
So I'm in Athabasca and we are on the Athabasca River. And I was sharing with Milan, and um, when you stand on the banks of the Athabasca River, well, for me, I'll speak for myself, it is obvious to me that the river is a living entity. It is a vein in the land. And it the power of this river, the volume of water that moves through this river, also demonstrates the power of water. And it is people walk by it every day. They probably don't even take in what the majesty of this river represents, right? But I was also describing to Milan how, it is also the river that is connected to the Athabasca tar sands. And so it is also a demonstration of how we are not treating our land the way we should be treating it. So it's a constant reminder to me. I see it every day, it's there. I can see almost it from my living room window, and it's a constant reminder of the magic and the connection that we have to the land, but also what the damage that we're doing to the land. And so it's
Mm,
a love and a reminder of some,
mm.
other things, right? It brings up emotion.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Lisa. Thanks for sharing that. And wow, being able to look out your window and see that and also be in that state of, the majesty, like you say, it's wow, incredible, the force, the power, that it's a living entity. And that's a different way of being in relationship to water than so many of us, right? Who just, oh, it's the river, it's being in relationship. And that's, part of the kind of heart of eco psychology. How can we come back into right relation? How can we be in reciprocity? And how can we see the world as animate? Which is how, for, thousands of years, our ancestors have lived. And, many still do, right? But many of our ancestors would have been, that's how we evolved. It was in relationship, it's in that relationship with the other than humans and the other living entities. The rock is alive, the water is alive. Yeah. Thank you for sharing. Ooh. Oh, to hear all of your stories. I'm sorry we don't have time to hear all of them. Um, but I hope you had a nice time sharing it with the other person. Let's talk about eco psychology a little bit. I'll sort of riff a bit, really. I've got a few bullet points to keep me on track, and then we can open up to questions, if that sounds okay. So, yeah, I mean, that speaks to it straight away, is this idea of reciprocity and the animate world. And I think for me, this idea for me, talking about how I've got to this point, and I think many of us in transition, we've got to a point, right, where it's like this is not good enough. The state of the world is not good enough. It's not just, it's not fair. And we study permaculture and we look at, fair share for people and planet. And yeah, I think the emerging field of eco psychology has come as a healing route for those of us who have been born into the culture of the industrial growth society. That's the way I see it. It's not for everyone. There are lots of people living around the world in reciprocity and in more balance with the world, with the wider world. But for those of us that were born into this more industrial growth society, I use that term because it's from Joanna Macy, if anyone knows her work. Yeah, so she talked of the industrial growth society, because it isn't everywhere, and this is the extractive society, that's evolved over time. The Industrial Revolution, the Western European countries and North America, who've taken from the South and the global majority and extracted the resources to then grow the riches. And why we're in the state of the world we're in right now. And of course, there's been many good things in progress, of course, right? We're all sitting here on a laptop communicating with each other, which is a miracle. Um, think back to like some old TV programs, right? Quantum Leap. Anyone remember Quantum Leap? Yeah. Quite a niche program when I was a child. But there was this device the guy used to have that spoke to him and he could sort of zap in and out of the future. And that's what we each have now. We have these incredible machines, right? That are incredible. They can, we can communicate with the world through WhatsApp. Like, wow, I can speak to my friends in South America. But on the other side of that, the quantity of consumption is so immense. We're using 2.5 times our planet every year. There aren't enough resources to live this lifestyle of the West, of North America. North America, 10 tons of carbon. No, that's the UK. 10 tons of carbon on average a year, the UK citizens using, whereas America's about 20 tons. And that compared to, other countries, the global south, the global majority, there's this wonderful graph from Oxfam, which is like this funnel. And at the top, you've got the richest 10% of the global population, which is all of us here. And then you've got using 50% and more of all resources. And then it comes down to this fine point where you've got the poorest 50% using less than 10% of the world's resources. And that's what's going on, right? When you look at it from a global perspective. So our current, uh, yeah, the culture we're born into is not sustainable, right? We all know that. You don't have to be an economist or a scientist to know, that's why we're all here, right? We're all working for transition. We're all here because of transition. Like, how can we change? And yeah, what can we do? And I think about there's the outer work, of course, like Joanna Macy talks about the different actions that we can take. We can hold the actions. We can stop the harm happening by blocking the roads, blocking the coal power stations. We can do that for a while, and then we burn out quite quickly. Then we could go into the world of the actual, business as usual. You could throw yourself in there, which I used to, and try and change it from within. Like, well done to anyone doing that right now, who are in those big organizations. Yeah, I see some face like, no thanks. No, thank you. That's exhausting. But people are doing it, like, hands up to them. Great, thank you. And then there's also the visioning of the future. Like, how do we create the models and the structures and the relationships that we want to have the life-sustaining culture that we desperately need. And of course, there's a time issue here, right? Things were at the record temperatures again, each year record temperatures. So there's all the outer work we can be doing, right? And we can be busy with that, busy, busy, busy. But we're kind of following the same model that got us into this mess in the first place. um, so there's something about taking a pause. And I think many of us get to this point as activists. You're going and you're going because passion doesn't run out, right? Talking Lisa about the river, that love, that passion for that river also brings the immense pain and the suffering of that river because of the pollution. And we see that again and again in different parts of the world. The things we love are becoming extinct. It's really, we're at, meta crisis. We've never met these kind of levels of distress before, and it's overwhelming and extremely depressing. So coming back to this place of like, okay, how do we resource ourselves? How can we stop and be resourced and have the energy to keep going? Because this will be, this is generations. This isn't, potentially in our lifetimes. This is for our children's children. We're doing this for future generations, right? This is a couple of marathons or maybe more. So something about how can we be the change rather than do the change. And I think that's the thing with ecopsychology. For me, on my journey of it, it has been from a background in economics, right? Economics, moving then into well-being because I couldn't keep doing the outer work. I needed to move into the inner work. So it's about coming into connection with oneself, taking the pause, listening, coming into connection with other humans, into a place where we can really hear each other and not repeat the kind of dialogue patterns of not really listening or waiting to say something that we want to say, or interrupting. So often in our culture, we're interrupted. And then listening to the other than humans, which we can only do if we're quiet, you know. And that's a daily practice. And there's something there, I think, for me on my journey. Like, I'm quite academic in my head. I'll read all the books. Yeah, I'll read the books on ecopsychology, and I'll read the books on nature connection. And, I'm sort of gobbling up information. The next article that's come out about nature connectedness by the University of Derby. And it's like, okay, read all the books and, follow the academia. But actually, it's been years now, 15 years plus of unlearning for me and slowing down enough to be able to listen, and it's a daily practice to not get distracted, you know. Yeah, to stop, to start the day with breath and with slowness and with silence, even with a 5-year-old running around the house. To getting outside, to being with the others, the other than humans, and connecting, it can be a sit spot, a simple sit spot, being with that tree that you love, or that river, that water body in your imagination if you can't get out of the house, but being with another and being in reciprocity and connection. And we're social creatures, right? We want to connect. We want to connect with the other beings and with each other. We're not supposed to be isolated, sat in houses on our own, on a screen. It was supposed to be with others and other beings, not just with humans. There's something about this, like, growing of our kin, the human kin and the wider kin. And this idea of the animate, really seeing that aliveness in everything, and taking a kind of humbling of the human ego. Our egos are so important, right, to be individuals, but also taking a step back, this kind of humbling of the mystery of it all. What's really going on in the world? What am I supposed to be doing? What's it all about? The kind of the capitalist model is quite depressing, really, isn't it? Almost like a hamster wheel running towards a big hard wall of, and then you die, as my Irish family would say. But, how can we be thriving and enlivened and be living in constant mystery and reciprocity with all of life, and allowing synchronicities to come through and being in service, at this time of the greatest challenges, and that kind of, buoying us up and giving us energy, and those things that pain us and cause us such upset or anger can flip into the passion and the love to move us into action. There are a few academics I can send you links to that you can look more into if you're into that. But some different ways into eco-psychology are 3 that I'll name now. One is nature connection. So that's kind of the work from Derby University, Nature Connectedness, as they call it. And you can read all about that. I won't go into much detail because there's lots and lots there. And you can download a wonderful handbook with all the information there. And it's Creative Commons, so you can all use it for yourselves and for others. So I highly recommend that. And so that's really incredible in the UK, where it's been piloted and now it's rolling out in various places as a green social prescribing offer. So instead of a doctor prescribing you antidepressants, for so many kind of modern issues, being isolation and depression, anxiety, these things coming from lack of connection, you can go for 6 weeks in a group of people for maybe 2 hours a week and sit by a river and sit outside and go through some exercises gently, really gentle exercises, and connecting with your senses. And there are 5 pathways that are followed. And it's really simple, actually, the framework, but it's really can be so profound, and especially for people that are really struggling. I meet people. So the 5 pathways of nature connectedness, 5 pathways of nature connectedness. And that's Derby University. And if you just pop that in Google, it will come up and you can download a PDF of the handbook. So that's amazing. And I do that every week in a little old mining town here in the south of England in Somerset. And it's incredible how people turn up at the beginning. Some people can barely be in a group, in a circle of people. They've got so much stuff going on. There's people grieving, there's people with, all sorts of issues that they're having to hold, as we all are, right, with the state of the world. So it's amazing, and I highly recommend doing some nature connection. And you can do that on your own, but it's really nice in a group as well. So that's one way in, and I feel like that's sort of the gateway. It's like the access point because anyone can do it, and it's about settling our nervous system outside because not everyone feels comfortable outside, right? It's not, sometimes the wild and outside is a place of danger actually for many. So kind of acknowledging that, but finding a safe enough space in a group of people in nature can be profound. So that's one access point. And then there's the realm of ecotherapy. So that's something I do one to one with people. And people offer, there's lots of different people that offer it online as well, and face to face. And that's a journey of healing and holding. And I love this work. It's so humbling. It's so beautiful. And we're all perfectly whole, right? The ecotherapy is always trauma informed and it's looking at the person as a whole interconnected being, and there's lots of different frameworks underneath this work from internal family systems, which some of you may be familiar with, to the work of Bill Plotkin in the Animas Institute in the States, who I highly recommend checking out as well. I absolutely love that work and using a framework called Wild Mind, which I use daily. And again, I think this kind of idea of the theoretical, of the conceptual, right? Reading about things is very different to embodying these things. There's something, yeah, that I think is really important about that switch of each of us, kind of the doing, and then kind of being in the inner and actually embodying something, which is a very different way and a process. And maybe some of you are already dancing in that world. Sounds like some of you are. Please write the name of that person, please. Dan, do you mind doing that? So Bill Plotkin at the Animas Institute, and that was internal family systems as well. And so that just a kind of brief touch on that work. So that's about the two of those frameworks sort of come together. So looking at our psyche instead of pathologizing whatever issues we have, whether you've had like a large trauma or a small trauma in your upbringing through schooling or, a bad word said to you as a child or bullying or your parenting, like whatever. We're affected through our journey, right? Through living. There's things that affect us and we have parts of us that protect ourselves at those times. And then here we find ourselves as adults. And then some of those parts may still be playing out. I know for me, having a 5-year-old daughter is definitely pressing some buttons of some of these old parts. So suddenly I'll notice I'm emotionally tender or reacting to something because I've been, a button's been pressed and there's a part of me that's reacting that's maybe a 5-year-old or maybe it's a 15-year-old, you know? There's a different part of me that's responding, and it isn't me in my adult self, that's for sure. And it takes some practice to get back into a state of stillness, breathing, listening, responding. But this work is about how can we recognize those parts? How can we really hear those parts? Because if we keep ignoring them, they'll keep coming back and they'll get louder. There's something about tending to those parts and listening to them and working with them and then eventually integrating them and bringing them back home. It's beautiful work. There's so much to say. I can't go into more detail because I'm also looking at the clock and thinking I want to give you all an experience in this short webinar as well. So we can go on to a few questions in a minute. But let me just introduce one more thing. Oh yeah, just to touch upon it. So you have the parts within our psyche. Someone mentioned it as like having a village in your mind. All these different parts, and they're all on the bus coming along, and they're, 1 minute someone's driving. You're like, no, 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 move over. It's all busyness, and these are always different voices in our heads from different parts of ourselves. So integrating all of that, and when we're in our full wholeness, a practice, a daily practice needed, we can be our adult selves. We can be whole and we can respond to things with that place. And that's a place of observation, connected to spirit, whatever you want to call that, to the wider oneness that we're all interconnected. And then also to the soul. What's the soul journey? What's my purpose? Whatever you want to call that. What are you here to do? What's your offering to the world? What are you in service of? What are your unique gifts? Your unique gifts to the world. Yeah. So all of that. And so you can go really deep into soul journey work, and that touches upon the next realm, which is the deeper nature realm, which some of you may have come across in different ways. So that could be rites of passage work, for example, which I know in my culture there is very little of. For example, a woman, a girl becoming a woman, moving into adulthood, a boy becoming a man. Like, how is that honored or recognized or celebrated? Is it at all? So we create our own rites of passage, right? By, going out and getting really drunk on cider or something. That's what we do in Somerset anyway. So we create our own rites of passage. So, being held and having rites of passage, I think, is vital for us to come back into this place of reciprocity and to like move into these stages of wholeness in our journey of becoming true adults and then elders. Where are the elders is what I'm often asking. Where I'm living, where are the true elders that are really walking the talk and showing us, and holding us? Quite rare. There's not that many around. Joanna Macy was one of them, one of my, mentors. And wow, what an amazing woman. If you don't know her, check her out. She is amazing, is still in the world in a different form. So the deeper nature realm can encompass that, but also dream work, going into the imaginal realm. What's the unconscious speaking to us? The shadow work. I mean, there's so many, and I'm sure many of you have other, things you've come across potentially, but going into that kind of deeper realm, in different ways. Altered consciousness could be plant medicine, could be chanting, could be breathing, breath work, dancing, drumming, lots of things. And also just to go back to that, the very beginning, to move back to the nature connection. I've spoken of that kind of group work, but that could also be horticulture, working in gardens with people in allotments, or just working alongside one in a garden. It could be working with animals, and connecting through horses, or there's so many different ways in with this nature connection. Forest bathing, is massive now in the UK. It's like forest bathing, or there's lots of different things happening, lots of different practitioners. And the thing is, okay, is there is no exact definition. This is the problem, right? It's this emerging field that so many different things are feeding into. There's no one definition. There's no one school where you can go and get your degree in ecopsychology. So it's kind of yeah, interesting, slightly chaotic right now, I'd say, in the world of this, and can be tricky, I think, to find legitimate and accredited places. But I trained with an organization called the Natural Academy, who are based in the UK, and they were amazing. So if anyone's in the UK, you could check them out. So let's look at the time. Yes, questions. Who's got questions? And then we'll move on to the invitation. Any questions? And also, if you do have a question that I can't answer now, I could always put something in the follow-up as well if people are really wanting to know something. Dan, are there anything on the chat?
No questions. There's
No.
some questions around
Oh, yay.
links and whatnot.
Thanks, Sylvia. You got a question?
I pushed the wrong.
Ah,
Sorry,
like, yeah.
I want a question. I have a question.
Yay. What's your question?
Well, it's a little bit provocative, but it's also very, very useful. So how do you communicate in simple ways the importance of feeling your interconnectedness with nature and the living world to the to the people that you encounter in your life?
Mm. Well, what do you,
How do you
yeah.
share this
Mm.
without running the risk of being like, oh yes, okay, all right, okay, right? Do you
Yeah,
understand
okay.
my point?
So you mean like if people were kind of maybe ridiculing you, saying like, "What do you mean you're connecting with nature?" Or if it sounds a bit hippie or silly, yeah, like that. Okay. Yeah, good question. I mean, I've been known as a sort of the hippie in every place I've worked, really. And I think it's a nice term. I think it's interesting. It's a good point, Sylvia, but right now I feel like the world is science and spirituality are sort of coming back together. I feel like this kind of separation came from, I mean, you could put it on, I don't want to blame it on anything in particular, but there was points in time where science needed to separate us from our animist culture. Because if we hadn't evolved into that place, we never would have been able to have to, test on animals, for example. We never would have been able to get to where we are now in medicine, actually, if we weren't able to do the things we did back in those days, to believe that nature, for like other than humans, dogs, for example, when they were first testing on them, early scientists, they felt no pain. And to get to that place where there's a separation and there's man, human, and then there's other, and one has this hierarchical relationship with it, and we are the all-seeing, all-being, species that has control over the whole planet and has all those things are our resources. That was a stage, and it was a long stage of separation, and there was lots of killing that went on there. I think about the witches, being burnt at the stake for being connected to the plants and the other beings and the other the other humans and the other peoples around the world. It's been genocides and genocides and genocides to get to that point of where it's actually fear, driving. We can't be connected. So you're speaking to something very real, Sylvia. It's to say that one is connected, interconnected with the other than humans, or could come across for some people, someone, so for example, working in a bank in central London, hedge fund manager or something, that would just be like, what on earth are you talking about? You know? So it is, yeah, how to talk about these things. I think for me anyway, I can only speak for myself, but it depends who I'm talking to. And I can, chameleon myself to, to say maybe speak to the person where they're at, because some people can hear to a certain point and some people certainly cannot. So you could go too far off on one trail and people, you've lost them. So that's why I love the nature connection. It's so simple. There's nothing hippie about it. You're just saying we have really busy lives and it's really good to slow down and to stop and notice. Really, what you're asking people to do is to take a moment to breathe and to tune into their own body and their sensations. And then perhaps thoughts come and go, but coming into the senses, like what can you feel, like the air on your skin, the temperature in the room, what can you hear, listening to bird song, hearing the trees, the wind in the trees, like those simple things at the very beginning settles people in a different way. And I think anyone can do that. I think anyone can do that. But yeah, it's how to talk about it. I think when I talk to people about, why do we need it? Look and see, Wendell yeah. I think everyone feels the sense of pressure wherever you are right now. There's a pressure in the air, right? There's a pressure in our systems, things are under pressure. There's the political pressure, economic pressure, biodiversity pressure, there's the climatic pressure. We've got record temperatures, like everything's just pressured. And I don't know anyone who isn't concerned to some extent about the state of the world. And so what I say to people is we could continue being really busy. We could be doing good things and be really busy, but if we're not listening and slowing down and connecting with the wider world, and actually, why are we all in a rush anyway? We're all interconnected and life is continuing all the time. If we took that pressure off this kind of short time span that we have in this body right now and just sort of leant back into the like oneness and the mystery, it takes, for me anyway, as a climate activist of many years, it takes the pressure off. My shoulders are lightened because I know I can trust the wider web of life, you know? Yeah, and I don't think that sounds too hippie, does it?
I really like your trust.
Mm,
It's so important. Trust.
yeah, yeah.
Thank
Trust.
you.
Yeah. Thanks for the question. Was there something else just then, Dan, that popped up on the chat? I'm not
There's
really
a
tracking it.
question from Milan. Why is it termed as psychology and not embodiment? Because I feel like it is more of a felt experience than a mental one.
Ooh, yeah, good question. Yeah, it is definitely embodied. I think back to the definition that I was given of eco-psychology, and it was healing dwelling place. Something about eco being home, the word eco, the root of the word eco being home, psyche being, the mind, and there's something about the mind coming home, something about belonging and bringing the mind home. Healing from the dwelling place of the soul. Nice, yes. Yeah, that's it. Healing from the dwelling place of the soul. There's something about coming back to us, as individuals. So the psyche itself is this interconnected with all the other, the consciousness, right? There's another way of looking at it. We're one consciousness. Are we just an expression of consciousness? I'm a wave in the ocean, as are all of you. We're each a wave, but we're all connected. We're all the ocean. So something about eco psychology is looking at, yes, each of you are the wave. And we've got this journey of coming back to this place of belonging and home and healing. But we've also got to step back into that wider eco. The home is the whole, it's the whole ecosystem. It's not you and me in a therapy room, just the two of us talking about my problems. It's everything, it's my intergenerational trauma. It's our intergenerational trauma, right? Think about what our parents, grandparents, great grandparents were in the world wars. Did anyone go to counselling after the Second World War? I don't think so. Imagine what, that generation had to deal with and then what they suppressed, and then what they passed on to their children. And then that was passed on to their children and then on to us. There's all of that and it's acknowledging all of it, it's acknowledging it all. Um, yeah, the stretch of life, all of it, humans and non-humans, other than humans, and oh yeah, so much to say, so little time, all our relations. Yeah, exactly. For me, the elements are an amazing way of connecting, right? And when I do a grounding at a session, I always bring us back to the elements in some way, lightly. I'll talk about our feet being on the ground and breathing in the air and feeling the water moving through our body in some way. So I always touch upon that. But I've kind of gone deeper, and I've done a lot of research into water and value of water, which I can mention at the end, maybe if there's time. But I feel like it's such a connector because water is in all of us. We are more water than anything else. And if you think about your body, as a baby, we're about 80% water. And then as we get older, we're about two-thirds water, maybe like 70%, to put a figure on it, 70% water, say, that we're water bodies. Yeah. And I love this idea that that mirrors the planet. We say planet Earth. Yeah, it's planet Earth, but it's planet ocean, it's planet water. Two-thirds of the planet is water. And so much of that water we know nothing about. The depths of the deepest waters, the deepest seas, we know less about than the moon. You know, it's it's a mystery. And there's something there that I love about the wildness of water. We can build on the land, we can, cover it in concrete. But yes, we can maybe drill under the ocean for some more oil, but we can't build too much on top of it. I think Dubai's tried, isn't it, to put some weird hotel on top of the water on these man-made islands. But, the water is wild and it comes, and like Lisa said earlier, it's strong. The water can smash away an oil rig if it wants to. It can destroy a boat. There's a wildness in the water. And there's something about water that, because it is in every single cell of our bodies and it's in every living entity, like water is life. There's not, there's no other thing like it. And scientists still don't really understand it. It's the only substance that can be in three different forms. It can be hard, it can be frozen, it can be liquid, and it can be gas. It's quite a mysterious thing. Liquid consciousness, yeah. And there's research into how water can hold memory. And I think, yeah, of course it can. It's a living entity. When you hear that babbling brook, is it singing a story to you? If we could listen, what would it tell us? And there's something there about it's a way to connect with the other, the wider ones, the other elements, the other than humans, but also with the other humans. I feel like we're at such a time, there's so much unrest between humans. It's scary, so much divide. And thinking about water being within all of us, crossing borders. What borders? There are no borders. Borders are man-made, they're not real. There's land and there's water and there's one planet and there's one system functioning. You could look at Gaia theory, if you want to look at the science side of it or the spiritual side of it, whichever perspective, you look at quantum physics, there is oneness. Everything is connected. Choose the lens you look through, spiritual, science, whatever. But water is moving through all the time and connecting us. And I love that idea. I love that idea of bringing us together, countries, different countries, doesn't matter. It's just living beings connected through water, moving up through trees, falling from the skies. It's an incredible thing. I could talk for hours about this, but I don't have hours, sadly. So, a little invitation with your glass of water. And just an introduction slightly on the four windows of knowing. So thinking about, yes, we have the intellect, the wonderful intellect that, we honor so much in our growth industrial society, the mind, but there's also the other realm. So there's the imaginal realm, and some of you touched upon that earlier, maybe in your sharing of the place, the water body. And then there's also the feeling and sensing realms. There's other ways of knowing this world. So I invite you to kind of be with that, not just the thinking, but thinking about if images come, if memories come, notice that, be curious, just notice. And if there's a feeling or a sensation, just notice it. You don't have to name it, you don't have to judge it. It's just about noticing and being with that. And sometimes these things can work us over time. Something keeps coming back to us in a dream. Yeah, there was this wave or there was this place. Maybe it brings you home one day. There's a place, the water. So I'm going to do a short grounding and then talk about water for a moment. And then just give you some time to see what comes. The babbling brook music will come back on. And if you feel free to draw or to write anything if you have that to hand, or just sit and daydream. So yeah, I invite you to either close your eyes or settle your gaze on your glass of water. Got mine here in front of me. And just take maybe a couple of deeper breaths into the bottom of your lungs. Really fill up your lungs as much as you can and blow it out. Let the air out. See how much air you can get into the deepest part of your lungs. Flushing your system with some fresh air. Yeah, and feeling the weight of your body on your chair, or on the floor, or the bed, wherever you're placed right now. Really let your body maybe relax just another percent at least into the wondrous thing that we can always be sure of, which is gravity. Yeah, just slowing down. And perhaps just noticing inside your mouth, the water in your mouth, running your tongue over your teeth, and feeling the saliva. And that water in your mouth is the same water that maybe the dinosaurs were drinking, or the dodo. It's the same water in your mouth right now. And coming into, perhaps if you can sense your pulse, maybe you can feel it or sense it somewhere in your body. And with each heartbeat, your blood is being pumped around your body. Incredible thing that happens without us needing to think. And that blood being mostly water, pumping around the veins of your body, keeping you alive right now. Just like the rivers on this planet, constantly moving. And imagine for a moment that you're just one drop of water, one drop in your blood, one drop of a tear, a salty tear from the ocean coming out of your eye, one drop of rain falling from the sky. So many journeys the water have been on. The waters falling from the sky in mist or hail, heavy downpour, and then landing perhaps on land or ocean. Perhaps trickling through a small river or a huge, wide, strong river. Always moving, always changing, always bringing together other substances, bringing together all the time, moving, working around obstacles. And there's a magic and a mystery in that movement, constantly moving around the planet, around our bodies. We are water beings, water vessels, water coming in and out of us. And perhaps water's the intelligent species here, using us humans to move around the planet like cups. And thinking about deeper time, maybe where the water came from in the first place. Scientists say maybe it was an asteroid of ice that landed on the planet perhaps 4 billion years ago. And that's where our ancestors came from. We lived in water. We came from water. We're all from water. Our ancestors are water beings. The first single cell organism came in the water, and then the multi-cell organisms, and then onwards, on and on and on, the evolution of the beings. And then we spent 9 months inside our mother's womb in water. There's so much to be thankful for. When we think about we can only last 100 hours without drinking water, that it is life. There's no other substance that replaces it. There's no technology that can replace water. We are water. And perhaps take a moment in your mind to imagine a way of being in gratitude with that mysterious substance, frozen ice caps, deep underwater, flowing as liquid, or rising as gas, boiling. Noticing any thoughts coming or images. Before gently coming back to your bones and the earth and the solidity of your feet and your hands, feeling your weight in your chair on the ground, taking a couple of deeper breaths into your lungs, that shared breath that we are being breathed together. Before gently opening your eyes. Maybe each taking a sip of water. This wonderful thing. Cheers. Amazing stuff. I was reminded of the beautiful pump created by the relationship between trees and atmosphere and water. Yes, yes. Pumping around the rainforest, moving around the planet. Exactly. So important and so unrecognized. How water holds being from ancient times, like the Arctic, char from the Ice Age and the lakes of Snowdonia. Yes, exactly. Beautiful. Bless the water. I have this reminder in my car. Gorgeous. I think of the integrity of water in spite of all the changes that she comes through. She keeps her formula. She goes. Yes. Yeah, I mean, so much to say, so little time. I apologize that I haven't been able to fit more into the session. And that's a mere moment's blip of what we could be doing. But again, like I say, it's all an experiment online because it's different being online. The intelligence of water, what it has seen, what it knows, what it carries with it over time and landscape, and does it impart to us when it's moving through us, water protectors and defenders, water is life. Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the sharings. There's so much to say. I'm going to pass you on to Dan because I know I've run out of time.
Uh,